All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to take 17 on a cold Saturday morning here in the Northeast. It's always nice to be down in a nice warm basement working on models when it's 25 degrees out and blowing 25 miles an hour. So, all right. So I thought I'd try live again, so we'll see how this works. So I got a little more time today. All right, so here's what I'm going to do today. Today we're going to finish up the controls. We finished up pretty much the minor alignment of the motor mount set. We're going to take the wing off. We're going to slide the other fuselage half in. We're going to put it back in the jig and realign everything. Once we get it all in alignment, we're going to kind of let it just set and be in position. And we'll look to set the stab up as well and glue the stab in permanently. So today I should pretty much have a plane. All right. So just going to finish up the controls. I got a wheel collar that's going to just hold this in place. All right, so this is my bell crank push rod. It's 0.117 wire that just bent in a 90, and I've soldered a washer on to let it sit inside the bell crank. The 3/16 carbon tube, and then it has a titanium rod and threaded rod from Central Hobbies in it that's already been epoxied in place. So I epoxied it yesterday in place. Today I'm just going to wrap it with Kevlar. And why I do that is because I'm always worried about that carbon potentially splitting as you have something in here. And if it splits, it'll come apart. The carbon just adds a little more strength to it. And that's all done with CA and, again, Kevlar thread. So I'll just get some thread out. And I do this to all the push rods. I used to use copper, but this Kevlar is better. So it's lighter, it soaks in better. I use copper wire on for epoxy. All right, so what I'll do is I'll start about 1 inch down or so. And I'll take some thin CA and just make a little pool of it there. Typically, I glue my finger to it. And what I'll do is I'll just wrap it tightly. I'll just take some thin CA and just coat the thread with it. And what I'll do is cut the excess off. And I'll go with thick CA and just kind of all right. And then you end up with a wrap. Adds a little strength. I'll do this for the elevator push rods too. I'll put it in a spot where it's not going to glue itself to it. All right, so here's the elevator push rod again, 3/16 carbon, all from Central Hobbies, ends. These are Dubru bowl links. I always make sure they're very free. They really got to be free, and if they're not, you either got to work them in or not use them. There's nothing worse than a binding ball joint in a control system. It will drive you crazy. You won't be able to get a hunt out of it. You won't be able to hit consistent bottoms with it. So really important that the controls are very free. And this is really, the heart of a stunt ship at a controls. So this is where you got to get it right. Take the time and get it. All right, so there's put a little dab of thin CA here. And what I'll do is I'll run the and like I said, this adds some simple strength to this. It just really keeps the end from splitting. To me, it's like a no-brainer to put do. I'll put a drop of thin CA here just to seal it up. Okay. Oh. Put a drop of thin CA again just to get the thread caught and started. And you just wrap it. This Kevlar thread is really good. It's only about 8 thousandths Kevlar thread. Adds a ton of strength. If you don't have Kevlar thread, you could use dental floss. Non-wax dental floss works too. Man, it's really windy out today. Okay. All right, so now we're going to just run the... So now we'll put thin CA on this. I mean, thick CA, sorry. Just to kind of seal it all in place. Okay. And there you go. The push rods are all set up. They're secure now. And what I will do is I will lube the ball links. And I always lube everything before it goes in. Again, you want the controls to be free. All right, so we'll talk a little bit about control ratios. So I happen to be using, the bell crank I'm using is made from Charette. It is 4 1/8 spacing. Typically use 4, but 4 1/8. 4 1/8. The bell crank pivot point is 1 inch from the center. Then I like to set my controls to be fast. I prefer to have really, really lightning fast controls. So I set the bell crank to flat push rod. I set it at 1 inch. I have used, 1.5. I've used 1 1/4. I find they're a little too slow for the response I'm looking for. It's all, that's kind of like a feel thing, how much arm movement you want. What I do is, I try to get my handle spacing around 4, 4 1/4, 4.5. and I just like the ratio of being at 1 inch. So I'll set it to 1 inch, and then I will also set the elevator push rod to 1 inch and 1 inch in the back. So I usually I start out with 1-to-1 controls. That seems to be what I like on these planes. Sometimes I do speed the elevator up, and believe it or not, there are times I've actually slowed the elevator down and felt I had a better corner, allowing the flap to be able to help the plane rotate better. But each plane's a little bit different, but I start out with 1-to-1 controls always, elevator to flap. So the system I run basically means that if I run 30 degrees of bell crank movement, I get 30 degrees of flap and elevator. If you raise now if you want to slow the controls down, you raise the flap push rod, the bell crank, raise it up one. Go to like 1 1/4 or 1 1/2. You slow your ratio down, it changes it. Like 1 1/4 to 1 is about 50 degrees of bell crank movement for 30 degrees of flap, roughly. Howard Russ has a great program that if you spend the time and put the numbers in, which I do, they generally come out just about perfect as long as you install it per the numbers you set. So, all right. Now we're just going to lube everything up. I just use some bearing oil. And what I'll do is put a drop in there and kind of just roll the bearing around, roll the ball link. The last thing you want is a ball link that jams up or has any rough movement in it. They actually make the helicopter guys have a tool that you can actually, you pop this out and you can actually take it in, and it will clean it up a little bit, make it a little freer, and then put the ball back in. So there are ways to get them free. And the other thing is I have a wheel collar holding it down in front, and I don't know how well you can see it, but I put a little notch in the end of it so that falls into the notch. And I will, once I get everything set, I will take a dab of epoxy and put it on the wheel collar. Once I get everything the way I want it. But that'll be later on. So I'm going to oil up the rod. All right, I'm going to start installing now. Again, just making sure it's really free. Put some oil on the bell crank, push rod. Okay. All right. And I'm just making sure it's really free. Okay, that's set. All right, so 440 bolt here. Again, they both go to the same one because it's 1 inch off the bell crank. Push rod, I should say, flat push rod, or flat horn. Okay. And the last piece is I'm going to put the elevator back in and just put that on. And just ensure we got fluid movement, no binding. Okay. Okay. All right, so I'm going to lock this one in. Just lock it in place while I set this back on. Oh, there's the bolt. And in the back, I use a slider. You guys saw me make the horns a couple videos ago. I'm just going to check. Use my block to check it. Okay. Just want to check the controls now. All right, very free. Good. All right. So now we're ready to take this out of the jig and put the other fuse half side on. All right, here we go. So I'll take the stab back out. And just for if you guys see, there's a slider in here. It's set at 1 inch right now. There's a brass insert that rides in there. Just put the screw back in. The stab is the last piece of the alignment that I will put in. But so far so good. The controls feel really nice. Just put this out of the way. Okay. All right. Now this is the tricky part, get this thing out of the jig. without damaging it, but without moving it around too much. So what I'll do is I'm going to move the front halves out. Okay. Put that right there. Okay. All right, so the wing is now out. Now this is where it is pretty fragile at this point, so you've got to just be careful. Now we're going to get the other fuse tab. Okay. Just checking the fit up on it a little bit, just making sure. It's all pretty good. Happy with the fit up so far. All right, I do got to run the control horn through this side. It's going to be a little bit of a challenge. I do want to put a piece of balsa on the inside of that. Something to glue to. All right, so we're going to have to kind of weave that through the little cutout I have. All right. Now we're going to put a couple dabs of glue on the formers. Take the epoxy, put some epoxy here, epoxy on there, and epoxy on there, and epoxy on here, and then we'll put it together. I'm going to use the same 820 stuff because I'm going to need some time to get everything in place and set it up. This is the tricky part. Let's just get everything lined up where we need it. I got my shims here. Okay. All right, let me get the epoxy and here we go. is where I wish I had a bigger shop. All right, sorry, the 420. This stuff works really well. I'm going to squeeze a little out first, the first little mixed bit. All right. You don't need a lot. All right, this just will add weight if you use too much of it. On the flange, I'll use CA when this is all together, the flange seam, because the CA will whip right in. But on the formers, the CA will not get in here. You got about 20 minutes working time with this before it starts to kick off. And again, you don't want to use an excessive amount, because it will just add weight. Okay, that piece is ready. All right, and I'll leave this sitting right there, ready to go in case I need it. Put a piece of wax paper on it. All right, so now the tricky part is getting the controls in. All right, here we go. So what I'll try to do is fish the controls through. All right, so the controls are started. I'll just try to line it up around this former here. All right. We just want to make sure it grabs really tight to the formers. It was a very good fit up. Make sure the seam looks good. And we'll tape the back too. All right, so we're going with the formers here, good. That looks pretty good. I'm going to be taping on the bottom. What I do is I put tape right over where the former area is. Gonna have to put a little bit right there. Just want to put a little bit of epoxy in here. You just want to wipe any of the excess off because you don't want to glue the wing to it. Okay. All right. I believe we are ready. Everything feels pretty good. All right. Oh. All right. All right, so there you go. Now it's time to get it back on the alignment jig. That's together. Pretty happy with the fit up. I mean, you can always, like that, I got to, So what I want to do there is I want to put just a drop of CA in here to lock this in. Just a drop of CA in to just lock this in. Oh, so I gotta get a little more. Okay. It's going to hold that in place nicely. All right, where else? I got to squeeze another spot together here. So I just want to make sure that the formers are touching here. Of course, always when you got to do something. All right, I'm just kind of tacking it in a couple spots just to kind of hold it together where I really want it. I don't have tape. So if I'm not happy with the fit, if I can always pull it back apart. Just where the formers are, I want to make sure that they're squeezed together. The last thing you want is a former not together or touching, because I mean that's what's adding the strength in here. All right, all right. I'm gonna get back in the jig, recentered, and all right. All right, looks pretty good. All right, now let's see how the wing is set in the jig. Zero. All right, so I have my height gauges here. Let's just check them all. It's right in the center. center. Right in the center. Good. Okay, everything lines back up nicely. All right, so we got up. And what I will do is I'm going to tack it up here. All right. So right where the former is, I can feel it not holding up against it tight. So I'm going to take a piece of tape, squeeze it. Good, there we go. All right, now let's see how we line up here. All right, that's straight down the middle. Good. Good. All right, so that's not bad. That's at 0. Now I do want to check my motor offset. So what I'll do is I'll put my should drill a hole in the middle of my ruler, but I just can't. Where's my tape measure? All right, so the trailing edge. .22 5/8. So I know that I gotta turn it out a little bit. All right, let's see. Because you want 22 and a half and 22 9/16. Okay. So now I got my offset in. I run about a 16th to an 8th. Let me just tighten up that. Little hair off. It's got to go that way just a little bit. All right, right on the money. I'll just double check this. 5/8. 5/8 will be exactly centered. A little less than 5/8. One more 5/8. All right, there's my 16th back again. All right, what I'll do is I'm just going to squeeze this and just tack the balls up in a couple spots. I'm pretty happy with that. The offset is what I want. There's the kicker just to kind of hold that in place. It's not a final glue seam. I'm pretty happy with that. All right. So we're going to put the elevator push rod in. We're going to install it. All right. Yeah. Yeah. Very close. We have to adjust the push rod a little bit, but that's fine. This is not exactly. Yeah, there we go. So, all right, very close. Very close. All right, that's dead center. Now it's doing a little bit of babysitting. I do got to just push the top of this up a little bit. Oop. And my laser could be a little bit off. And it is. So we're going to reposition it. Just look down at it. All right. I'm going to reposition them a little bit. That's pretty good. Just about right down the middle. Five eighths. Got a little bit more. Need a little bit more offset here. Let's just double check it. All right, my 16 to the back. So you just got to constantly just babysit a little bit. Every time you move this thing around, you could definitely. And that's right in the middle of the stab. So I'm just going to make sure this is lined up the way I want it. Just putting a couple tacks in a few spots. All right. So the alignment looks pretty good. Just looking at the fuse to make sure it looks right. It does. Make sure you don't got one piece of fuse down like that. It looks pretty good. I mean, I sand the 1/8 down anyway. 2 pieces of 1/8 here. I'll sand it down. I'll make that a little bit lower because I will put a little filler in there just to make sure that that seam is perfect and buried. But that's kind of how I align this. And next up would be the stab. So I'm going to give this a few minutes because I don't want to bang it around too much. Kind of let it dry up. But I'm going to start working towards the stab. Checking the alignment. Again, height gauges really help. Having marks, yeah. Good, good. All right, let's just check this side. Right in the middle. Two. Make a slight adjustment. Yeah, better. Just make a slight adjustment here. 30 seconds. Much better. Yep. It's 0. He's on the incident meter. All right, very happy with that. And I'm gonna just double check the first one. 5/8 and 11/16. Perfect. So you want the outboard side to be turned out because you want to be able to have the prop pull the plane out. Never in 0, 0, 0 is fine. It doesn't hurt to have a little bit of motor offset, and a 16th is like a degree and a half. So there's really no harm in it. And it doesn't look bad, especially if you set it right. All right. So now I got that set. What I want to do. All right. So I'm going to set up my digital one here on this side. Now that I know that this is so what I do is I use the digital one because I don't like to move that one. I like to leave it right where it is. So what I'll do is I'll set it. I know this is set at 0, calibrated 0, and I can transfer over to the other one. I never like moving around. I always feel like I guess I just prefer the analog ones. The digital ones are nice, but then you always got to make sure they're calibrated right. All right. So I did get a question from Robert. What are we building? So I'm building, this is high voltage number 11. This is a F2B control line plane or control line stunt, Precision Aerobatics model. It's my design. This one is completely composite, where everything was formed composite. It is made of balsa, 1/32, fuselage sides. The wing skins are about 50 thousandths or 45 thousandths, and same with the tail. With half-ounce glass on both sides. And this wing is pretty unique because it has no ribs in it. It just has the one landing gear half rib in it, and everything else is 007 carbon ribs in it. If you watch the videos, you can kind of get a good idea. All right. All right, so we're going to check the height now. Tail. Okay, so we're not in the right position, which is fine. All right, so Steve, morning, Steve. What is the weight so far? Good question. I want to say, I think I got a picture of it roughly. I'm just checking my phone. It's about 27 ounces, I would say, right now, which is kind of on track to be at about 63 3 ounces, 66, anywhere between 62 and 63 and a half, depending on how the finish comes out. All up, in what I'll say is because it already has the base finish on it with the fiberglass, so I'm already ahead of the game there. Um, all up, I want to be about 35, 35 ounces roughly. Um, so I'm shooting to be 35 ounces, landing gear, all up, bare wood. The electronics weigh about 23 ounces total. Wires, motor, ESC, timer, battery, prop, spinner. That's about 23 ounces worth of stuff. So I want to be finished. If I'm finished at 40 ounces with a finish on it and tip weight, I'm in a good position to be about 63 ounces. This design is flown as heavy as 66 and as light as 60. So, but 62, 63 seems to be a really good number, or it doesn't hurt performance at all. Steve's asking what type of finish. That's a good question. On this one, I may go back to using Class Coat, an epoxy finish with using some Createx colors or water-based colors. There's some automotive colors. I may use that. The other option is I have urethane car paint. I may use urethane, but the clear will definitely be urethane clear. What I do is I use DuPont. I use the 4-to-1 DuPont mix, and I cut it about 75% with urethane thinner, almost like water, allowing me to put on multiple coats without big weight gain. All right. Just wanted to do the back here for a second, just tack it together. All right. All right, as the epoxy is drying, we're going to start working on setting the stab. Where's the marker? Here. So what I'm going to do is just going to get this thing set. All right, not bad. So I have some marks on the back here. All right, we're just gonna set the back now. Okay. All right, we're gonna disconnect the elevator push rod here. There's no need to keep it connected at this point. All right, let's just take a look down. Okay. All right, and that's kind of what I'm gonna take a break now because I kind of gotta just let the glue set up. I'm gonna babysit a little more. Really not a lot of fun to watch. But next we'll be setting up the stab for the final alignment of the stab and gluing the stab, which shouldn't take that long. Hopefully you guys got to see just how I align my planes as I get them together. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Again, if you guys enjoy the videos, like them. Thanks for watching. I'm going to end the stream now. Have a great day. Thank you.